All right, what's up, everybody? So the other day, I was scrolling through the comments of some bodybuilding fitness video on YouTube, and I came across a comment that informed me of a little bit of an attack on the natural community, on natural bodybuilding, this community we have on here. So I was a little bit intrigued. I did some research and watched the person's video that was an attack on the Noble Natty community, and I got a bit of a kick out of it. And I think it had some spicy hot takes, and I wanted to use this as an opportunity to kind of fight against those takes, because I don't want to exaggerate my points, but I do think that this person's takes are borderline delusional, and that's how bad I think it is. So I do have a few paraphrases written down. These aren't word-for-word quotes, but I didn't want to use any of this person's footage or do like a voiceover. I just didn't feel like editing this one. I'm going to leave it anonymous as well, because I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to do that. So basically, fitness YouTube channel made a video that I entirely disagree with and want to make some cases against, because I think these takes are borderline delusional. So he starts off the video, so we're off to a good start. He starts off the video by saying, there's this community, these people call themselves the Noble Natties. I won't spend a whole ton of time on this point, but that's actually incorrect. We were called the Noble Natties, and we say it to ourselves because it's ironic. So there was a YouTube channel called Revival Fitness that decided to call the whole natural community the Noble Natties because they think we're just obsessed with being natural and are always like shaming PED users and everything and whatnot. So we got called the Noble Natties, and we thought it was funny. It's hilarious and stupid and ironic, so it just kind of stuck. It's an inside joke, and obviously this person doesn't get it, so not the end of the world. Who cares? I just thought it was a funny point that literally within the first 2 seconds of the video, he was like actually already incorrect about something. So the next point that he makes, the first real point in the video, is that every person in the Noble Natty community is always propping up their heroes, so that he's implying that we have all these heroes that we're obsessed with, that we're like fanboying over in the fitness industry or in the bodybuilding world. And then he goes on to say that every one of our heroes, every single one of them, not most of them, he literally says every single one of our heroes is on gear or on PEDs of some sort. So a little bit to unpack here. So first off, nobody in this community really like fanboys and has these like quote unquote heroes. Like, you look at the people that like get on their knees for sebum and stuff like that, like that's not people like me or you. Those aren't like the Noble Natty people. I highly disagree with that. And then to say that if we do have a hero, that person's on gear is absurd. How many times he referenced Louis Simmons and Arnold? Who talks about Arnold in the Noble Natty community? Who talks about Arnold as a hero in this community? Nobody. Ever. I've never mentioned Arnold. Any Noble Natty channel that I've mentioned doesn't like look up to Arnold as this magical like natural bodybuilding inspiration. Part of the reason why we don't look up to these PED users is because we came into an industry with so much bullshit that we had to sift through and almost like revive bodybuilding for something that actually worked for natural lifters. The stuff that Arnold talked about and the stuff that Arnold did just doesn't really work for natural lifting. So that's not to say that he knows nothing about training and the gear gave him all the results, because I think that's just as bad of a statement. But let's be real. The stuff that Arnold did and those programs he puts out online, that's not going to work. And that's part of the reason why the Noble Natty community is so strong, is because we had to come into an industry with so much BS that we had to fix right up. So basically, we don't really have heroes. If anything, it's just each other. Like, I'm motivated by my peers in the Noble Natty community, and I think that's vice versa for everybody else. It's just like friendly competition. Nobody has heroes. Like, I really don't see it that often. And then if we do happen to have a hero, like quote unquote, and that's, I'd say using the word hero is a bit of a stretch, it would always be somebody like I said, each other, or maybe like Steve Reeves, who's like an actual natural legendary bodybuilder who had a ton of success, actor, all this stuff, and it's someone that is just motivating. But to even say it's one of our heroes is an entirely stretched statement, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. The next point that he has here that I want to talk about is that we think that we're morally superior. So one, I don't know if we think that we're morally superior. I don't feel like getting into that whole argument right now because I don't want to drag this video out forever. But the reason why I noted this down is because literally 10 seconds later, once he finishes up his take, which he's basically saying that he respects bodily autonomy and he thinks everybody should have their own choice and freedom and do what they want, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I'm not going to get into that. But then he says that that's morally superior. So he doesn't make fun of the argument that naturals are more morally superior and whatnot. He says to say that you're morally superior is ridiculous and narcissistic and vain and all this shit. And then he makes his point and then says, actually, that's morally superior. A little bit ironic. And this is where it just gets like, this is where I start to think that it's like borderline delusional. And I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but I think it's an odd video. It really is. He also goes on after this to like further prove his point about staying natural versus being morally superior and all this kind of stuff versus taking PEDs. So he compares being natural versus taking PEDs, so being natural versus enhanced. And then he goes on to compare that to eating unhealthy versus eating healthy and not working out versus working out. So the problem with this is that you're comparing being natural to being enhanced, to where you're taking illegal substances to enhance your physique, and they're illegal for a reason, to eating healthy versus eating unhealthy. That's entirely different. Those aren't even things that you can compare. And again, I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time diving deep into these arguments. It would probably take a full video on each one itself to really go in depth. But I think you can see where I'm coming from here. We're comparing natural to enhanced, which is just doing nothing and just letting your body do what it needs to do, to taking an illegal substance that you can't even have in this country, to eating junk food versus healthy food, or working out versus not working out. Those are not in the same ballpark. Those are two entirely different things, and I don't think that's a reasonable comparison whatsoever. And the next point that he makes, and this is just a paraphrase, he goes, you have these people who act like they're morally superior, who walked into the fitness world, and I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but PEDs and enhanced bodybuilding has been around in the fitness world for longer than you've been alive, and that won't change. And I actually get where he's coming from with this one, and I think it's one of those things where as I get a little bit older and I can see the new generations coming up thinking that they like discovered this magical new trend or this magical new exercise, and I'm like, oh, well, the same thing happened 7 years ago. I remember that phase happening, and now everybody forgot about it. And now it's and there's a bunch of new people in the fitness industry, and now this whole thing is getting propped up again. I think it happened with the supplement turkesterone or something like that. So I get where he's coming from, where he says, oh, here we go again. We have these new, younger people coming in, acting like they discovered everything and started all this stuff, but really it's been around for longer than you've even been alive. So I understand that. However, I think when you take it into this context, where right now, the Noble Natties, I'm not saying that natural bodybuilding hasn't been around for that long, because it has been around for a while, but at the same time, when somebody like myself and the rest of the Noble Natty content creators on this platform, when we came into the fitness industry, there's nothing for natural lifters. Very, very few channels, very few sources of information. So the fitness industry and the fitness community in general has been dominated by enhanced lifting. And a lot of that stuff, not all of it, but a lot of it, especially the stuff that gets a lot of views, is a lot of bullshit. It's a lot of things that don't work, that's purely marketing, just so people can make money and be successful. You take somebody like V-Shred or like Mike Chang from Six Pack Shortcuts. Like, that's the stuff that we had to use to learn when we first started lifting. And sure enough, the more time and the more years we put into lifting, the more we realize how much bullshit that actually is. And then we finally learned how to train, learned how to program through experience and talking to each other, and built everything up. So I'm not saying we're new to natural bodybuilding. That's been around for a while. But let's be real. If we actually want to help and grow the natural bodybuilding community, there has to be somebody that actually does put out these new ideas and this new content. A lot of the stuff from the Noble Natty community is novel content. A lot of the stuff hasn't been talked about online before. So when you have channels like mine and the rest of the Noble Natties, take like Alex Leonidas, Jeffrey Dirty Schofield, Natural Hypertrophy, Bald Omni Man, etc., and there's more, but those are kind of the bigger channels in the community. A lot of these ideas are new, and these are things that I was not hearing 5 years ago. These are things that you were not hearing 5 years ago. So is every single idea that we have new? No, not necessarily, but a lot of our programming methods, a lot of our training methods, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, and even just the stuff about being natural versus enhanced. Natural bodybuilding is one of the loneliest things until like 3 or 4 years ago, when some of these channels similar to mine started to come up. And I wasn't the first, so I don't want to act like I was the first by any means. The first years of my lifting career, and a lot of people that started lifting before 2019, 2020, where the natural community actually started growing, can kind of attest to that, where you just do your own thing. You know, everything that you see online is BS, and it's lonely. You feel like you're by yourself. You only have yourself to learn from. And now we actually have a legit community that has like legit training methods and legit programming methods too. So it's cool to have, and there's a reason why it is seeming like kind of a novel community that is new and is kind of changing the game in certain ways, because personally I think it is. So the next point that he talked about, and this is where I think he invalidates his entire self. He goes, natty is a marketing term. Making money is their only motive, and they're trying to build a cult-like following. And I think we can see where this is getting to that point of being delusional. So first off, we don't even call ourselves the Noble Natties. How many times have you guys seen me call myself a natty? Like, basically never. It's an ironic term from somebody else that labeled us the Noble Natties. So it's not even a term that we say. We don't even call ourselves Noble Natties. So that's incorrect. And then to say that if we do call ourselves that, it's only for marketing. We're just trying to sell something. Who in this community is selling BS? Who? Like, we would call that out instantly. I sell coaching, and I bet 90% of my channel didn't even know that, because I don't even talk about it. I put my email in my description. I never mention it. I don't do that. Like anybody else, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, some people will sell, like a lot of people, yeah, they offer coaching, but they don't push it down your throats. They're not trying to like mislead you in any way to get you to sign up for coaching or like lock you into something or whatnot, or let alone selling supplements and any of this kind of stuff. But I just think it's hilarious to say that this Noble Natty community is just trying to sell you something. I don't think anybody feels that way. Like, look at who's doing it. Who's trying to sell you products? The only time anybody in this community even talks about supplements is to say that you don't need them, or just give you the harsh truth about what supplements actually do. And then the final point, which I think secures this take and secures this video to be entirely delusional, he says most guys who refer to themselves as Noble Natties, wait for it, use gear just to sell you their products. So I know we already talked about the whole selling products thing, but he actually thinks most Noble Natties, so people like me, for example, he thinks that people like me, people like Alex Leonidas, Natural Hypertrophy, guys like this, he thinks we're all on gear. That's pretty sad. That's just absolutely delusional in my mind. And that's not to say that their physiques aren't impressive, because of course they are. But to say that based on everybody in this community, say like the top 5 or 10 Noble Natty channels with an extensive knowledge on training and methods and technique and everything you would ever need to get as jacked as you possibly can naturally, to say that those people are on gear is absurd. I really truly do think it's absurd. That's how confident I am that these guys are actually natural. So with that being said, I won't keep dragging the video out. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything in the video. I love having talks like this, so maybe I'll make more videos. We shall see. See you guys in the next one.